At our wedding, my fiancé slapped me and screamed, "How could you not wear my mom's wedding dress? Put it on or get out." I walked out. He shouted, "You will regret this." I replied, "Time will tell." A few days later, he called begging, but it was already too late. His hand hit my face so hard my head snapped sideways and my veil slipped off one shoulder. I heard the crack before I felt the pain, a flat, sharp sound that bounced off the tile walls of the bridal suite and hung in the air between us like something that could never be taken back. My ear rang. My teeth cut into the inside of my lip and I tasted copper. The room tilted for a second, then righted itself, and when I blinked the world back into focus, I saw my own reflection in the mirror behind him, a bride in a $4,200 ivory gown, with a red handprint blooming across her left cheek like a brand. The ceremony was supposed to start in 13 minutes. 200 people were waiting in the ballroom downstairs, white linen, crystal chandeliers. The string quartet was warming up. I could hear the faint scrape of a cello through the floor. My bridesmaids were in the hallway. My father was standing at the foot of the stairs in a rented tuxedo, holding a bouquet of peonies he'd driven 40 minutes to pick up that morning because the florist delivered the wrong shade of blush. And the man I'd loved for 6 years was standing over me with his mother's yellowed, sequined 1980s wedding gown in a plastic dry cleaning bag, pointing at my face and screaming, "How could you not wear my mom's wedding dress? Go and put it on or get out." 6 years. 6 years I'd bent myself into a pretzel for this man and his mother. 6 years of swallowing my voice, my pride, my identity. And in that one crack of skin on skin, every reason I'd ever given myself to stay shattered like a dropped glass on a tile floor. I reached down and pulled the diamond ring off my finger. I dropped it onto his mother's ugly dress where it lay crumpled on the bathroom tile. "You will regret this," he screamed. "If you walk out that door, we are done. You'll have nothing." I looked over my shoulder. "Time will tell," I said. "I need to go back." Because that slap didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of 6 years of a pattern I refused to name until it named itself. My name is Maya Torres. I was 26 when I met Ryan Crawford at a fundraiser for the accounting firm where he worked. He was 30, a senior associate on track for CPA partnership, the kind of man who wore his ambition like cologne. Just enough to notice, not enough to offend. He was smart, confident, articulate, and devastatingly attentive in the way that certain controlling men are before you learn to recognize the difference between devotion and surveillance. For the first year, I thought I'd won the lottery. He texted back instantly. He planned elaborate dates. He remembered everything. My favorite wine, the name of my college roommate, the fact that I hated cilantro. He called me his person. He said I was the first woman who truly understood him. What I didn't understand, not yet, was that Ryan's definition of understanding meant one thing: compliance. The first red flag came 4 months in, the night I met his mother. Diane Crawford was 59, twice divorced, immaculately dressed, and operated with the emotional precision of a woman who had spent 3 decades perfecting the art of the passive-aggressive compliment. She looked me up and down when Ryan introduced us, smiled with her mouth but not her eyes, and said, "Oh, she's very pretty, sweetheart. Let's hope she has substance too." Ryan laughed. I smiled. My stomach tightened, but I told myself it was nerves. That was my first mistake, not the last. Over the next 6 years, Diane inserted herself into every corner of our relationship with the surgical accuracy of a woman who understood exactly how much she could take before anyone noticed the blade. She criticized my cooking at family dinners. "Maya, honey, that's an interesting way to make risotto. Ryan's grandmother would have done it differently, but that's fine." She rearranged my apartment when she visited, moving furniture, replacing my dish towels, once swapping out my bathroom hand soap because she found the scent aggressive. She called Ryan every single night at 9 p.m., a ritual he never missed, even if we were in the middle of a conversation, a movie, or once, memorably, an argument about whether his mother had the right to show up at our apartment unannounced with a key she'd had copied without asking. "She's my mother, Maya," Ryan would say whenever I tried to raise it. "She sacrificed everything for me. The least I can do is make her feel included." Included. Diane wasn't included. Diane was installed. She was load-bearing. Try to remove her and the entire structure came down. I tried. God knows I tried. The engagement should have been a warning sign the size of a highway billboard. Ryan proposed on our 5-year anniversary. Beautiful ring, private dinner, the whole production. I said yes because I loved him, or at least I loved the version of him that existed when his mother wasn't in the room. Within 72 hours of the engagement, Diane had opinions about everything: the venue, the flowers, the guest list, the menu, the bridesmaids' dresses, and most of all, most relentlessly, most obsessively, my wedding dress. "I wore the most beautiful gown," she said at the first family dinner after the announcement, her eyes going soft and theatrical. "Hand-sequined bodice, ivory tulle. My mother helped me pick it out at a little shop on Belmont Avenue that doesn't even exist anymore. I've kept it preserved all these years." She looked directly at me. "It would mean the world to me if you wore it, Maya, to keep the tradition alive." I had already bought my dress. I'd found it at a bridal boutique on Michigan Avenue 4 months earlier, before the engagement, before I even knew Ryan was planning to propose. I walked in to browse, tried it on as a joke, and cried in the fitting room because it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever worn. Clean lines, no sequins, no lace overload, just a simple, stunning ivory gown that made me feel like myself. I put down a $600 deposit that afternoon and paid the remaining $3,600 over the following months. When I told Diane, gently, carefully, thankfully, with a prepared speech about how much I appreciated the offer. Her face went through 3 expressions in under 2 seconds: surprise, hurt, and then something cold and flat that I would later recognize as the beginning of a campaign. She didn't argue, she didn't cry, she just said, "Oh, well, I suppose that's your choice, dear," and smiled. For the next 4 months, she brought up the dress at every opportunity. Offhand comments, nostalgic stories, photos texted to the family group chat. She told Ryan's aunts, who told Ryan's cousins, who told anyone who would listen, that I had rejected a family heirloom and refused to honor tradition. She rewrote the narrative so completely that by the time the wedding arrived, half the guest list believed I'd cruelly rebuffed a dying woman's final wish. Diane was not dying. She had the constitution of a steel cable, and the other half simply assumed I was difficult. Ryan absorbed every word. "Would it really kill you to just wear it?" he asked one night 3 weeks before the wedding. "It would make her so happy. I have a dress, Ryan. I've had it for months. Your mother knows that. It's one day, Maya. One gesture. Why are you making this so hard? Why is your mother making it so hard?" He didn't answer that. He never answered that question. He just shook his head with the look of a man whose patience was being tested by an unreasonable woman. A look I'd seen hundreds of times, always in contexts where I was the one being reasonable and he was the one pretending not to notice. I told myself it would pass. The wedding would happen, the dress issue would die, and we'd move forward. I was wrong about all three. The morning of the wedding, I arrived at the venue, a converted estate house in Lake Forest, at 10 a.m. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. My bridesmaids were already there. Priya, my college best friend, my cousin Lucia, and 2 friends from work. My makeup artist, a woman named Kendra Williams, 12 years in bridal beauty, portfolio in Martha Stewart weddings, had my face halfway done when my phone started buzzing. 7 texts from Ryan in 4 minutes. "Mom is really upset. She's been crying since she got here. This is supposed to be a happy day, Maya. Can you please just think about it? She brought the dress. It's in the car. Would it kill you to try it on? If you loved me, you'd do this one thing." I showed the text to Priya. She read them, looked at me, and said 2 words: "Absolutely not." I silenced my phone. I finished my makeup. I put on my dress, the one I'd chosen, the one that made me feel like me. And I looked in the mirror and felt, for the first time all day, something close to calm. That calm lasted exactly 41 minutes. At 3:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the ceremony, Ryan kicked the bridal suite door shut behind him. He wasn't carrying flowers. He was carrying his mother's yellowed, sequined gown in a plastic bag. What happened next took less than 3 minutes. It felt like an hour. "Change," he said, not asked. "Ryan, the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. My mother is crying in the front row because you refused to honor her." He stepped so close I could smell the mint on his breath. "Put on my mom's dress, or get out. I will not marry a selfish, disrespectful woman who treats my mother like trash." I looked at him, the man I'd spent 6 years building a life with, the man whose shirts I ironed, whose anxieties I soothed at 2 a.m., whose mother I'd tolerated with a patience that should have qualified as a clinical skill. I looked at his jaw set tight, his eyes flat, his hand gripping the plastic bag like a weapon. "Ryan," I said quietly, "it's my wedding day. Please don't do this right now." That was when he hit me. The crack echoed off the tile. My ear rang, my lips split against my teeth. The room tilted, and my veil slipped off one shoulder. He didn't flinch. He pointed at my face and screamed, "How could you not wear my mom's wedding dress? Go and put it on, or get out." And something happened inside me that I can only describe as a temperature change. The hurt didn't arrive. The tears didn't come. Instead, 6 years of rationalization and accommodation and self-erasure went cold in my chest and hardened into something diamond clear. I pulled the ring off, dropped it on his mother's dress, walked out. But I didn't go to the parking lot. I didn't call a cab. I didn't run. Because here's the thing Ryan forgot. He was wearing a lapel microphone. The videography team, a 2-person crew from a company called Whitfield Visual, booked 9 months earlier for $3,800, had clipped a wireless lavalier mic to Ryan's tuxedo lapel an hour before the ceremony. Standard procedure for wedding videography. It was live feeding to the AV booth at the back of the venue, recording everything, every word, every scream, every crack of skin on skin. I walked through the hallway with my veil trailing, my cheek burning, and my heels clicking on the hardwood. I passed my bridesmaid's room. The door was closed, they hadn't heard, and kept going straight to the AV booth beside the ballroom entrance. Josh Whitfield, the lead videographer, 8 years in wedding cinematography, a quiet guy with a shaved head and steady hands, was sitting behind his console. He was pale. His headphones were around his neck. He'd heard everything through the live feed. He looked at my face, at the red handprint that was now swelling visibly. "I need you to play the last 3 minutes of Ryan's mic feed over the main speakers," I said. "Maximum volume." Josh stared at me for 2 seconds. Then he nodded. "Give me 30 seconds to cue it up," he said. I took those 30 seconds to breathe, to feel my heartbeat in my swollen lip, to look down at my dress, my beautiful, perfect dress, now slightly crooked at the shoulder where the veil had pulled, and make peace with the fact that I was about to do the most terrifying thing I'd ever done. Then I pushed open the double doors of the grand ballroom. 200 guests, white linen tablecloths, crystal chandeliers catching the late afternoon light, flower arrangements and blush and cream that my father had helped choose because Diane said my taste was a bit supermarket. Ryan's entire family on the right side, his boss, Richard Harmon, managing partner at Harmon & Kessler, a mid-tier accounting firm firm where Ryan had worked for 7 years, his firm's 3 senior partners, his college roommate, his golf buddies, the people who knew the public Ryan, charming, controlled, impeccable. They saw me walking down the aisle alone, no bouquet, no veil, no music, and a blazing red handprint on my cheek that was impossible to miss under the ballroom lights. The murmuring started like a wave from the back rows. I heard my name whispered 5 or 6 times before I reached the podium. I picked up the microphone from the officiant's stand. The officiant, Reverend Douglas Adler, who'd been hired by Diane because her church was the only appropriate choice, looked at me with confusion that was already turning to alarm. "There will be no wedding today," I said. Dead silence. 200 people holding their breath. 5 minutes ago, in the bridal suite upstairs, my fiancé demanded that I take off my wedding dress and put on his mother's old gown from 1987. When I refused, I pointed at my cheek. He hit me. The silence cracked. Gasps from the left side. A woman in the 3rd row covered her mouth. My father, standing near the back entrance where he'd been waiting to walk me down the aisle, went completely white. Diane, front row, right side, wearing a silver sequined gown that matched her personality in all the worst ways, turned crimson. She opened her mouth. I raised my hand. Then I looked at Josh in the AV booth. I gave him the nod. The speakers crackled. My voice came first, small, pleading, the voice of a woman who still thought she could de-escalate the man she loved. "Ryan, it's my wedding day. Please don't do this right now. Please." Then his, cold, flat, a voice that 200 people had never heard before, because Ryan Crawford saved this version of himself for rooms with no witnesses. "Put on my mom's dress, or get out. I will not marry a selfish, disrespectful bitch who treats my mother like trash." Silence in the recording, then the sound. Crack. Amplified through the ballroom's professional speaker system, it sounded like a gunshot. Several people flinched physically. A woman near the back let out a short scream, then his screaming, full volume, unhinged. The mask ripped clean off and played back at concert decibels. "How could you not wear my mom's wedding dress? Go and put it on or get out." The silence that followed, in the recording and in the room, was so heavy it crushed the air out of the space. Then it erupted. Gasps, shouts, women crying. A man in the 4th row stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. Ryan's boss, Richard Harmon, rose slowly. His face twisted into something between disgust and career recalculation. 2 of Ryan's aunts were clutching each other. His college roommate was staring at the speakers with his mouth open. And Diane covered her face with both hands and began wailing. Not for me, never for me, but for her precious reputation, which was burning to ash in real time in front of every person she'd ever tried to impress. I set the microphone gently back on the podium. I smoothed my dress, and I turned to walk back down the aisle. As I reached the halfway point, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. My maid of honor, Priya, who had heard the commotion, found me gone from the bridal suite, seen the handprint on the security camera monitor in the hallway, and called 911 at 3:51 p.m., was standing behind them with her phone still in her hand. Ryan appeared at the side entrance at almost the same moment. His face flushed, his tuxedo disheveled, looking like a man who had just realized the building was on fire and every exit was blocked. The officers approached him. One of them, later identified in the police report as Officer Kevin Marsh, 11 years with the Lake Forest PD, asked him to step outside. Ryan looked across the ballroom at 200 faces staring back at him. Not one of them looked away. I walked past the officers, out into the cool evening air, and I didn't look back. 4 days later, Ryan called me 47 times. I know the exact number because my attorney, Caroline Reeves, family and civil litigation, 16 years in practice, former clerk for the 7th Circuit, had advised me to document everything and respond to nothing. On the 48th call, I picked up. His voice was wrecked, hoarse. The confident, controlled Ryan Crawford was gone. In his place was a man drowning in consequences he hadn't believed were possible. "Maya, please." They arrested me at the venue, in front of everyone, in front of my boss. My firm put me on unpaid leave pending the outcome. If I get a felony domestic battery conviction, I lose my CPA license. I lose everything. You have to drop the charges. I don't control the charges, Ryan. The state does. You hit me. There were witnesses, there's an audio recording, and there are photographs. The ER doctor at Lake Forest Hospital, Dr. Amara Singh, documented the contusion, the split lip, and the soft tissue swelling at 6:14 p.m. that evening. Exhibit A is already in my attorney's file. Silence. But I can tell you what I do control. I continued. Check your email. My lawyer just served you with a civil suit. More silence. I could hear him breathing. Fast, shallow, panicked. And Ryan, one more thing. Remember when your mother insisted on signing the venue contracts herself because my family had cheap taste and she wanted to make sure the event was done properly? Her name is on every contract. The catering, the bar service, the venue rental, the floral arrangements, the videography team, the same team whose equipment recorded you assaulting me. You and Diane are legally on the hook for $82,000 of a party that ended with your arrest. The sound he made was not a word. It was something between a gasp and a whimper. "You can't do this to me," he whispered. "You did this to yourself, Ryan. Every single part of it." I hung up. The aftermath unfolded with the kind of methodical precision that happens when a man's mask comes off in front of every person who ever mattered to his career. Richard Harmon, Ryan's managing partner, released a statement within the week. Ryan was terminated, not suspended, not placed on leave, terminated. The firm cited conduct fundamentally incompatible with the values and professional standards of Harmon and Kessler. His name was removed from the company website by Thursday. The Illinois CPA board opened a review of his license. Caroline told me a domestic battery conviction, even a misdemeanor, would almost certainly trigger a formal hearing, and a felony conviction would result in automatic revocation. Ryan's entire career, the one he'd built for a decade, the one that funded his ego and his mother's lifestyle, was now contingent on the outcome of a case supported by an audio recording, medical documentation, security footage, and the testimony of 200 witnesses. He didn't stand a chance. Diane attempted damage control with the desperation of a woman watching her social standing collapse in real time. She called Ryan's aunts and told them I had provoked him. She posted on Facebook a long, rambling message about how family traditions were being weaponized by vindictive people. She called my mother and told her I should be ashamed. My mother, a retired school administrator from Berwyn who had spent 6 years watching her daughter shrink, hung up on Diane mid-sentence and then texted me 3 words: "I'm so proud." The criminal case moved forward. Ryan's defense attorney attempted to negotiate a plea deal. The assistant state's attorney, a woman named Patricia Nakamura, 9 years in domestic violence prosecution, no nonsense in a way that made Ryan's lawyer visibly uncomfortable, played the audio recording in the pre-trial conference and reportedly said, "This isn't a negotiation. This is a courtesy." Ryan pleaded guilty to misdemeanor domestic battery. He received 18 months of probation, mandatory anger management, a protective order, and a criminal record that would follow him for the rest of his professional life. His CPA license was suspended pending completion of probation. Caroline told me the board's internal recommendation was revocation. The civil suit settled 4 months later for an amount I agreed not to disclose. What I can say is that between the venue contracts, the catering, the floral deposits, and the damages, Diane Crawford, who had spent 6 years making me feel small, wrote a very large check from the savings account she'd always bragged about at family dinners. I saw a therapist for the first time 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't. Her name was Dr. Lena Okafor, clinical psychologist, 14 years specializing in intimate partner abuse and trauma recovery. She had an office in Evanston with a gray couch and a window that looked out onto a tree that was just barely starting to bud in the early spring. In our first session, she asked me when the abuse started. "He only hit me once," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said gently, "Maya, I didn't ask when the hitting started. I asked when the abuse started." That question opened a door I'd kept locked for 6 years. Over the following weeks, I unpacked things I'd spent years rationalizing. The way Ryan monitored my phone, the way Diane was weaponized as a loyalty test, the way every disagreement became about my failure to be supportive, the way I stopped wearing certain clothes, stopped seeing certain friends, stopped speaking up in certain rooms, not because anyone explicitly told me to, but because the cost of doing so had been made quietly, persistently clear. Dr. Okafor called it coercive control. She explained the pattern with the calm authority of someone who had seen it hundreds of times. The isolation, the erosion of autonomy, the rewriting of reality until the victim questions her own perception. "The slap was the first time he was physically violent," she said, "but it was not the first time he harmed you. He'd been harming you for years. He just used quieter tools." That sentence rewired something in my brain. I'd spent 6 years believing I was difficult, oversensitive, insufficiently grateful for a man who put up with me. I wasn't any of those things. I was a woman who'd been trained to shrink, and the moment I refused, the mask came off. It's been a little over a year now. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Wicker Park 2 months after the wedding. It's small, the kitchen is narrow, the bathroom has a window that doesn't close all the way, and in winter the cold air sneaks in and fogs the mirror before I've finished brushing my teeth. I love it. Not because it's perfect, because it's mine. Every wall, every shelf, every cup in the cabinet chosen by me, for me, without checking whether it met someone else's standard of acceptable. I went back to work. I'm a UX designer at a tech company downtown. I got promoted in September. My boss told me my work had a new clarity to it, and I almost laughed because clarity is exactly what happens when you stop living inside someone else's distortion field. I still see Dr. Okafor every 2 weeks, not because I'm broken, because maintenance is how you keep a foundation from cracking again. My father calls me every Sunday morning. He never says much. He's not a words person, but he calls and he stays on the line, and sometimes we just sit in silence together and that's enough. Priya, the woman who heard the commotion, checked the hallway camera, and called 911 while I was still standing at a podium in front of 200 people, is still my best friend. Last month, she sent me a framed photo of us from college with a post-it note that said, "Always had your back, always will. It's on my nightstand now."